Good morning or good afternoon, depending on when you are watching this. This is Shelby Bronner in the State 4-H office, and I'm pleased to offer you the 4-H Healthy Habits Grant Training for the 2018-2019 year. So I want to say welcome, congratulations for submitting an application for this grant and for it getting submitted. I hope that this is very successful for you, and hopefully this training will help you be successful. So just a quick overview of some of the topics that I want to cover with you. It will actually have an overview of what the grant is and what it looks like, implementation, budgeting and reporting, communication, incentive items, evaluation, best practices, and in a brief nutrition overview. So grant overview. So some of the grant overview to give you a basis of some of the things about this grant so you understand. It is funded by National 4-H Council and they receive funds from the Walmart Foundation. So National Council awards states and the states decide how they are going to spend that money or award it out to their counties or parishes. So the programs in this grant, they should support, facilitate, and improve healthy food choices balanced by physical activity. So I always say that this grant is heavy on the nutrition side, but it's also important to include some of that physical activity part because, as we all know, it's a balance between the two. And it focuses specifically on providing holistic nutrition education. We don't typically like to use the word holistic, but this is what is used by National 4-H Council to describe this grant. And it aims to focus on underserved audiences in grades 2 through 12, with 2/3 of the participants in grades 4 through 12. So, of course, in Tennessee, we don't start 4-H until 4th grade, so really all of our participants should be in grades 4 through 12. So just to give you a nice little visual of where we are placed with the Walmart grant this year, we have 5,800 youth as our reach goal. This has been our goal for the past few years, and we have successfully reached it every time, so I have no hesitation that we will accomplish this as a group. And there are 18 counties that are implementing this grant. As you can see, we are heavy in the western region, and that is totally fine. We love our western region folks, but we do have some in the central and some in the eastern. So I want to give you a little bit of statistics just to help you understand the importance of nutrition and physical activity education. I'm sure you already know this, but just in case you have not seen any statistics lately, this data is from the 2017 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, so it's fairly recently published. So 26% of youth admit to drinking one soft drink per day, or at least one. 10.7% drink at least, and that says dank, but it should say drink, at least 3 or more soft drinks per day. And then 10% of youth indicated they do not eat vegetables, meaning at all, never. And then this one I'm not really surprised by, but 30.2% youth reported they do not drink milk. And this increased from the 2015 data, but I think we all know the popularity has grown among almond milk and coconut milk and all the different types of dairy alternatives. So a couple of things related to physical activity. Youth who are on the computer or play video games for 4 or more hours per day is 44.4%. So basically these kids are coming home from school at whatever 4 o'clock and sitting in front of a screen until 8 o'clock or later that evening. They're not outside playing or exercising or interacting with their families. And so then youth are not physically active for at least 60 minutes per day. This is 74.4%. So that's quite a bit of our youth in Tennessee that are not getting that physical activity and sweating like they're supposed to. And then lastly, the data over here related to fruit and vegetables is just a different way to look at it, or a different way the statistics are reported. So 45.4% of youth consume fruit less than 1 time per day, and then 45.9% of youth consume vegetables less than 1 time per day. And then related to obesity and being overweight, this is definitely not something we should be proud of. We currently rank first in the nation for youth obesity, and that is at 38.4%, with the nation's data at 20.6. So we're quite a bit of ways over that national level. So now I want to talk a little bit about the implementation of this grant and what that looks like. So you should know this grant did start technically September 1st of 2018, and it will end August 31st of 2019. This needs to be face-to-face, so you cannot do pre-recorded PowerPoints like I am now, and send those out to youth and have it count towards your hours. Now you can do that. You're more than welcome to. I'm happy for you to do that, but it cannot count towards your 6 hours of instructional programming. And so with that being said, you should serve every youth that you submitted in your application that was approved with 6 hours of high quality direct instructional programming. So just like I said, it needs to be you or whatever, the team leaders or volunteers, talking directly to those kids, and you can see them and look them in the face, not on Skype or Zoom or whatever. So I kind of just said that too. You need to include team leaders and utilize them as teachers. That part is heavy on this, having teen ambassadors. We do have healthy living ambassadors in Tennessee, so if you're not a county who has healthy living ambassadors, the first is I'm going to put a plug. Make sure that you apply for some of your teens to be healthy living ambassadors this coming spring. And second thing is use those teens that are, whether they're in the Nutrition, Health, and Fitness Project or not, they can definitely still be involved with this grant. And then there was a list of approved curriculum that could be used for this grant. So it's not just one specific, but whatever you wrote in your grant proposal and were sent back comments from me is what was approved. So please stick with it. If you want to change it, if you have alterations, just reach out to me, let me know, make sure we're on the same page. And then last thing, you must host at least one family/community engagement event. So this might be like a health fair, some type of workshop, whatever it looks like, so that you can invite the family members of those 4-Hers that you're reaching to this event. It doesn't have to be, super long. It could be a couple hours on a Friday night or a Saturday. If you have questions, just reach out to me. So a few more things regarding to implementation. You must use the Walmart Foundation logo on your whatever your flyers you print out. We'll talk about incentive items, but on those as well. And the program is called 4-H Healthy Habits, and there's another typo, so I apologize. It should say healthy, not health. But refer to the program as 4-H Healthy Habits. That is the name that they are calling this grant program. So we want to make sure that we're, all being, all calling it the same, and it's recognized as the same across the nation. So you must complete the required post surveys from youth participants and teen teachers. So it is not a pre and post, so you only have to give the survey once. But there is a survey for the youth participants who are actually receiving the curriculum and doing the activities, and then there's a survey for the teens who are helping teach and helping you prepare for the program as well. So that's 2 separate surveys. So just know that, but you must complete or have the youth complete those. You must submit the interim and final report on or before the due date. Please know this is very important that you submit those to me on time, because I'm on a deadline to get those submitted to National Council. And if we don't submit those on time, they take some of our money. And so I think it's only fair that if you don't submit them on time to me, that we, take some of your money. So just please keep that in mind. When I have the dates, I will let you know. And soon as I get what those report questions are going to be or what it's going to look like, I will give you a heads up. The way I have been turning in reports lately through all of the grants that I manage is a Qualtrics survey. It's easier for me to download everyone's data into one Excel sheet and, go through it, make it pretty, and send it to National Council. So you will get a Qualtrics survey link from me, hopefully 2 weeks or more if I can before the deadline for you to submit, and then I will get all of that turned in to National Council. So with that being said, at the end of every month, you should submit a monthly budget sheet with your receipts to me. This is to make sure that we are on the same page, you stay on budget, all is good, we're good to go. And then submit at least 2 impact stories with photos. And I will say you can be really creative with this. It doesn't have to be just a picture and 3 sentences. It can be made into a video form. More than happy for anybody's creativity. I'm not gonna turn down the notch on that. So let's move into budgeting and reporting. So for this grant, you receive $6 per youth served. So what you submitted in your proposal has been reviewed and emailed to you with approval or changes if needed. Some of you, I don't think, you needed any changes and it was good. My biggest suggestion, if you do not have a 4-H procurement card already, I'll suggest you apply for one. And I will have an instructional letter emailed or mailed to you of how you need to proceed if you're interested in doing that. Any single item that you purchase over $100 requires approval from me first. So it's not if the total of all of your items equals $100. It's just if one single item equals $100. I'm sure that anything you're planning on buying is perfectly fine, but we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We don't throw up any red flags to the funders. And then lastly, all funds must be spent by June 30th, 2019. So this will take some planning on your part. If you are planning on still having some of your programming in July and August, because the grant doesn't end until August 31st, you need to think about what you can go ahead and buy before, the funds have to be spent June 30th. I know it does get difficult with fresh fruits and vegetables, but if you could already teach those lessons before this date, or if you could work it out to use frozen or canned. I know that's not always the best option, but just think of alternatives and plan ahead, because this date being earlier than the end of the actual grant always sneaks up on everyone. So I'm just telling you, definitely mark it on your calendars, give yourself a 2 weeks heads up, whatever you need to do. So I want to clarify on what you can actually spend your money on with this grant. I say healthy foods, and this can be very broad to whoever, but I do include some nutrition info at the end of this. But by healthy foods, I just mean don't be going out buying chips and soft drinks and Little Debbie's and that type of thing. If you're following one of the approved curriculums, it's most likely that those items are not in those lesson materials unless it's being used as an example. But most of the time the items needed for your lessons are fruits and vegetables and yogurt and granola and those types of things. And then kitchen items, and when I say this, I mean things like a blender or a griddle or a toaster, knives, cutting boards, mixing bowls, those types of things. Definitely not saying to go out and buy a $400 Vitamix blender, but you don't have to buy a little tin cheapy blender that's probably going to tear up either. So if you have a question or you think, I don't know if this is approved or not, just reach out. I'll tell you if it is or not really easily. And then, so other things you might need to teach a lesson, whatever, paper, pens, flip charts, post-it notes, markers, those things are approved. And then incentive items. Talk more about those, but incentive items for the youth who completed the program or completed a survey. This definitely isn't saying that everybody gets to get 5 t-shirts and 10 water bottles. We don't want to be excessive, but I think 1 or 2 items is perfectly fine. So make sure that you're staying on track with spending. This is just for, honestly, purposes of National Council, and we don't want to throw up any red flags. So, for example, if you're planning to reach 100 youth, your total budget's going to be $600 because you get $6 per youth. So by the end of the first quarter, which is December, you should have spent around $150. Doesn't have to be right on. By the end of April, which is halfway through the grant, you should have spent around $300. And I want to clarify by saying, if you're planning on offering this just during the school year, fall and spring semester, probably by the end of April, you are going to be done or almost done with your program. So you have most likely spent all of your money at that point. Totally fine. This is only going to be if you're offering this program fall, spring, and summer to stay right on this December as 25% spent, April is 50% spent, etc. But just make sure that our spending aligns with exactly what our programming schedule is, if that makes sense. So if you were just planning to do, a week or 2 long week, or 2 week long, I should say, summer camp in summer of 2019, you're not going to buy anything just yet. You're going to wait until closer to time, and that is totally fine and understandable. So your budget tracking sheet is going to be due at the end of every month to me via email, and I always say this is the last day of every month. I'll show you an example on the next slide of what I mean by budget tracking sheet. I don't have any other fancy cool name for it, but honestly, this is just what you have spent for the month. And making sure that I know what you've spent and, your receipts and stuff that's in Iris. It all lines up. It's just making sure you stay on track and I know that you're on track. Also, it is required and expected that if you spent nothing for the month, that you send me an email saying I spent $0 for the month. This is just to make sure that you sent me something and I don't just assume you spent $0 even if you really went out and spent $500 or whatever for the month. So whenever you send me this budget tracking sheet to my email, please send me a PDF copy of your receipts that correlate with the spending. If you spent personal money, please submit a copy of your T44 that you submitted in that receipt, or your T4 if you didn't have a receipt. And then if you used an invoice to purchase the item, please include a copy of that invoice. So this is an example of what the budget sheet looks like. In italics here is my little example. So in the date column, you just write the date that you purchased the item. So my example is 9/15/2018. You've got 2 columns, travel and supplies, which are the 2 categories for your budget that you submitted in your grant application. In these 2 columns, all you need to do is mark an X. So, was this travel? No, it wasn't. So, I'm going to leave it blank. It was a supplies item, and so I'm going to just mark an X. The amount was $10. I purchased this at Walmart. How did I pay for this? This was on my personal P card. This is important so that I know that we're all on the same page, and whoever ends up receiving your copy of your P card statement, if, for example, in our office is Leila Moore, and so she has questions, I can easily look at my records, and we're all good. So if you decide to use an invoice or your personal funds, just indicate that here. And then just a short explanation of what you bought. So I put vegetables for taste testing. You are also more than happy to put. So once you have emailed me your budget tracking sheet and your receipts, I will reply to you as soon as I can with your updated balances. And so on there, it looks like this. It has your beginning balance for supplies and travel, how much you have spent, and what you currently have as your ending balance at whatever the end of that month. So if you see in this example right here, this was for the end of June, which is when the spending ended. I always put whenever I update it, so it was 2 days after the month ended, the June month ended. I wanted to point out this example. You can see that supplies was overspent, but there was money in travel to make up for that. as long as you communicate with me that you want to move some travel money for supplies, I'm totally fine with that. Just, make sure that you communicate that with me, that we're on the same page. So we definitely don't want to overspend in both categories. But whenever I send this back to you, just take a few seconds, make sure that what I have got matches your records, because I very easily could have typed in something wrong. And so I definitely don't want to short you any money. And so I know this looks kind of crazy and it was hard to fit on here. And it won't look like this when you first get started. This is honestly like at the end of a grant period. But this is the other sheet where you start filling stuff out with the date, if it's a, traveler supply charge, the amount, where you bought it, and then what your explanation is. And on this one, I color coded blue for supplies and orange for travel. It's just a lot easier for me to go through and see and add these up. So you definitely don't have to do this just like I do. This is what works for me. As long as you send me this information so I can input it into the way I like to keep track, I'm totally fine with that. If you find another method that works, by all means use it, and share, because, maybe I like your method better than I like my own. So I want to quickly go over reports. There's only two. There's the interim and the final. So the interim and the final typically have some of the same questions, but I will send you a link to the survey like I mentioned earlier, typically 2 weeks before it's due. If I can do it sooner, I will. And I'll try not to fall behind on that 2-week deadline. But just as a heads up, typically some of the things that it will ask, it's going to ask the number of youth who have received all 6 hours. That means they're done with the program. So that total number. The race and or / ethnicity of the participants, those that have completed that 6 hours, the grade of those participants, and then the number of teens involved with the program, so those that are helping teach it or helping you prepare, so they're not receiving the program, they're the ones that are helping teach. And then the race and ethnicity of those teens, number of family members who interacted with the program, number of partnerships, and then types of partnerships. And by types, it's usually like faith-based, school, community, and other. And then there's always a short narrative. So they typically always ask for a story of impact, a positive impact on one specific youth, an impact story on the community, any challenges and or successes, best practices you want to share. So some important dates, just to throw at you. Definitely don't have to write all this down. I will follow up with you. But budget sheets, I just wrote these out. There's really no point, but they're due on the last day of every month. So I don't think anybody is going to be working on December 31st. So I always say just send me that before you leave for holiday break. I know that's usually December 15th we start seeing people take vacation, and your programs, are probably not going on because schools are out. So just go ahead and send me that before you leave on break. And so you can see the rest of those are just on the last day of every month. Reports, so January 7th, 2019 is when you will submit your interim report. If you don't think that you're going to be back in the office before then, do it before you go on leave. It is going to cover all of the things that you have done from September 1 to December 31st. I would say if you're going on leave December 15th, then you're probably not doing any program that last little bit of the month, so it's okay to submit what you have. And then your final report, which will cover everything you have done in the grant from September 1 of 18 to August 31st, 2019, and that is going to be due September the 6th. So just keep that date on your calendar, make you a sticky note, put it on your computer, whatever you need to do. And then training, this is just this video that I'm putting together, released October 16th, and then hopefully will have completed it by November 1st and completed the short survey, just so I know you paid somewhat attention. And then evaluations for those youth and teens, this is due September 15th, and I will touch on evaluations and go into detail in just a second. So I want to talk about communication and what that looks like so that we're all on the same page. So we will have a quarterly call starting in December. That's just one-on-one, me and you. This is just to give you a chance to ask me any questions that you might have. Really just a touch base for me, make sure you're feeling good. You don't need anything else from me. You're on track to reach all of your grant deliverables. Really, and if you want to share some awesome, super great things that you have going on, by all means, please do it during this time too. But we'll have one in December, one in March, and then one in June. And I will set up some doodle polls for you to select all the times that you're available, and we'll just go through and I'll send you a calendar invite to get you on that calendar. And we'll take 5 minutes out of our day and just catch up. And I really just said this. Please reach out to me at any time if you need to discuss the grant. So I want to help you be successful. If I need to come down to your county and help you deliver a program, I most certainly will. Just give me a heads up. And I do want to reiterate, if you plan to not reach your youth before September, August 31st of 2019, please tell me as soon as you know this so we can get a plan in place. Let's figure out how you can do it. But I need to know this ASAP rather than waiting until last minute when the grant's almost over. So something that I'm doing this year to keep me on the same page, knowing when I talk to people, is just a grant communication log, so I know when I talk to whoever, what method that was, what grade or grant it related to, what actions it require on my part, that kind of thing. So if you need to do something like this to make sure when you talk to me what we talked about, whatever, by all means, do what works for you. Incentive items. So before you place your order or finalize your order, however you want to do this, through 4imprint, other online websites, a local printing place, whatever, I'm fine with whatever you want to do, you must first receive approval from me. If you do not receive approval from me and you place the order, we will not be paying for that out of this grant. You will have to find another way to pay for it. We're not being mean. We just want to make sure that we have got all of the artwork correct, and all of the wording on the items are accurate, because the Walmart Foundation is very much in touch with all different types of printing companies, and so they know if something is not printed correctly, and we don't want to be that state that throws up red flags. So whenever you're wanting approval from me, please submit the artwork that you're planning on using. This includes whatever, the design, the logos, the wording, whatever. The cost, so what your total cost is going to be, and then the item itself that you're purchasing. Is this water bottles or ink pens or Frisbees, whatever this is. So you must use the Walmart Foundation logo, and I've got it pictured. There's also another one that's not stacked. It's just changed out just a little differently. Depending on your item, it might work better, but make sure it's not just the Walmart logo. This is the Walmart Foundation logo, and so we want to make sure that we have that correct. So they are very picky and specific on making people understand that the Walmart Foundation funds the program and they are not putting the program on. So usually they will want you to put this program funded or sponsored by, then have the Walmart Foundation logo. So we don't want to put this program, whatever, Walmart Foundation. I mean, it still is whatever Carter County 4-H putting the program on, but the Walmart Foundation is funding the program. So if you have questions, just work with me. I promise it's not a big deal. We'll get you taken care of. And then the other thing I want to say is plan ahead of what you are wanting to order before you need it. so you don't have to pay rush fees and rush shipping. We want to be good stewards of money. I know, some of you receive quite a bit of funds from the grant. And, even though, you might receive quite a bit, let's still be good stewards of funds. So just plan ahead on, that you have 100 students, so you're going to need 100 water bottles. It probably is going to take at least 2 weeks to go through the processes of approval and getting it printed and shipped. So think, at least a month out of when you want to place that order. So evaluation. So the evaluation for this grant, I think, is fairly simple. One of my favorite things about this is there's no parental signatures required. All you have to do is print out the surveys at your office and give them to the youth to fill out. That's it. So I always say build in your time at your last program that you have going on. Don't try to do it at another 4-H meeting or catching them some other time. Go ahead and plan in 10-15 minutes for them to take the survey, and then all is good. I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to say it again. There is a youth and teen survey. And let me specify once again, youth meaning they participated in the program, they did the activities and that kind of thing, and teen meaning they taught the program. So you might have teens in the program, but they're not the ones teaching it, they're receiving it. So just make sure that you have your surveys separated appropriately. It is a requirement by National Council, not by me, I promise, that 50% of your participants complete the surveys. So if you're reaching 100 youth, you need to have at least 50 of those youth complete surveys. You can't force a kid to take a survey, but I definitely think having incentive items helps. You might have the teacher on board to give extra credit or whatever additional points or something for completing it. I always say aim for all the participants, though. There's no reason not to. It definitely makes us look better when we submit more surveys than the number of youth that we reach. And the last day to do evaluations is September 15th, 2019. But I want to elaborate on that. September 15th by 11:59 p.m. is when this data must be entered into Qualtrics. So the way the data works with this grant is that it is overseen by Nebraska 4-H evaluation team. And so you enter it into a Qualtrics survey. And so your options for that is your youth, if they have access to a tablet or a computer, have them just take the survey there, because you don't have to print anything, you don't have to buy pencils, and then you don't have to have you or someone in your office go through and enter all those surveys. Now, if you don't have the option for tablets and computers, obviously printing them is going to be your best option. But at that point, you have 2 options for entering the data. So your first option is you can pull the Qualtrics survey up and basically enter every answer, almost like you're taking the survey every time. Or there is an Excel sheet that has codes to the answer. So if there's, for example, let me say there's on question 1, there's 4 choices, A, B, C, D. But for the Excel data, question A, or answer A is a 1, or answer B is a 2. Answer C is a 3, answer 4, or D is a 4. Sorry, I'll get this right. So you'll just go through, do 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how that Excel sheet works. It has codes. So you can do that, but you're going to need to send this to me before September 15th, because I will have to put all of the counties into one. I can't send 15 different Excel sheets to Nebraska. I have to send one for Tennessee. So if you're planning on doing the Excel sheet, and I'll send an email with this in it as well, I'll need that at least by September 10th. So I have a few days to get all that data compiled and then follow up with those who choose to turn it in late. So let's go through some best practices of this grant. So I always say think about your goal and what you want to accomplish. Write out the steps to get to that goal, and so you kind of have a checklist for you. I'm very much of a checklist person, and if you're not, that's okay. photos. Be sure to take lots of photos of what's going on. This is easy for you to complete a report, and it's also easy, to use it later for social media and flyers and that type of thing. A receipt file. So because you obviously have to turn in receipts to get reimbursed or for your P card, start a receipt file, whether this is a notebook, or a little paper manila envelope, or if you just want to do a digital file. Make sure that you have those saved in one place. You know where they are when everything's due at the end of the month. Organization. So have your game plan ready to go from the beginning of how you're going to accomplish these grant requirements. Put the dates for reports and budget sheets on your calendar, so that way it sends you a reminder every month. And so be prepared and be early. I think that'll cause us all to not have a headache. And then I know many of you already do this, but if not, work with schools, help set up a partnership. You can think about working with teachers in health and wellness, PE, the guidance counselor. There may be other options for you as well. And then trainings. Take the time to train your teens and volunteers. We don't want to assume that they know the material. We want to make sure they're on the same page, that they feel welcome, they have a good experience too, because we want the youth receiving the program to have a good experience as well. And then a few more. I always say, if you're stuck in a rut or need some ideas, while you are more than welcome to reach out to me, I think reaching out to other agents in counties that have done this for several years is always a good option too, because, they're boots on the ground, so, they face the challenges that I certainly don't. And then hands-on. I think we all know this because we're on 4-H, but make sure your lessons are hands-on so the youth are able to actually learn and engage in what they're doing rather than just sitting there looking at a PowerPoint like you're doing right now. And then flyers, display, this says Health Rocks, it should say Healthy Habits. Materials on school bulletin boards to reinforce your message. So whatever you're teaching that month or that week, whatever, think about posting those things on a school bulletin board. See if there's a school newsletter you could put something in. Just be creative of the ways that you can promote and showcase what you're doing with the program. And then I've already touched on incentives, but use incentives for participation. It's certainly allowable with this grant. Not saying that you can go out and buy everybody, whatever, a Bluetooth speaker or something, but, think of 4-H stickers and pencils, bracelets, water bottles, Frisbees, whatever. If you need some inspiration, I always say go look at 4Imprint because they have everything under the sun, that you could possibly want. So a few things on social media. You can use it to boost participation, and that includes about current programs going on, things that are coming up, and as well as sharing flyers that you've already created. Engage audiences, so host online contests, use the gifts option and videos, actually reply to comments and engage with the people who are commenting. Use hashtags, and you can use polls. And then be creative. Things like Instagram, Boomerang, Snapchat, Facebook, Pinterest. So these are just different platforms. And then supplement your programs. You can post about current contest, related news articles and stories, and educational resources. So here's just two examples from posting about, things that are going on. Or here in Shelby County, they had an example of their table that was set up. Still kind of related to social media, but helping market your program. Don't be afraid to brag about the great things that you have going on through the program. It's okay, I promise. And let the participants do the selling. So let them get their phones out during a program and put something on social media. Make a hashtag. Make sure they use your County 4-H Facebook page to post on. So I think that's a great way to definitely sell the program, and show what's going on without you actually having to, take time to make a Facebook or Twitter or Instagram post. And then newsletters. I'm sure you all use newsletters, but reach out to schools and other community facilities to see how you could post something in their newsletters or whatever, bulletin boards, whatever works for you and your community. And then fairs, participating in different whatever health fairs and other booths that you can promote the grant. So to wrap up, just a little nutrition overview. This is going to be the basics. This was developed by FCS down the hall, so I promise I didn't just make this up or pull it from Google. But I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page of just the basic nutrition. So make a shift. When we say make a shift rather than a gigantic change, one day at a time is, what's going to be successful in the long run. So going from high calorie snacks to nutrient dense foods, going from refined grains to whole grains, going from fruit products with added sugar to eating the actual fruit, and then choosing snacks that are, like nuts that are unsalted instead of a snack with added sugar. So over time, these small shifts can grow into healthier eating patterns that become the way we eat on a daily basis. So this can lead to healthier hearts, lower risk for some forms of cancer, lower blood pressure, and lower risk for diabetes. So I'm not going to read all of those to you. I'm sure you all know this, but I want to also add processed packaged foods such as microwave popcorn, chips, crackers, cookies, pretzels, noodles, Little Debbie cakes, Lunchables, candy bars, sandwich meat and cheese, hot dogs, Pop-Tarts, frozen dinners are not healthy. So definitely none of those items are approved for purchasing on this grant. So I do want to make that clear. Processed foods are usually high in sugar and high fructose corn syrup. They contain artificial ingredients, preservatives, colorants, and texturants. So make your foods count. Making shifts in what we eat can help us get more nutrients from foods with fewer calories. So you can sometimes eat the same foods, but you just have to prepare them in a different way. So peaches in syrup, or fresh and frozen peaches. French fries versus a baked potato, creamed spinach versus steamed spinach, and then frosted shredded wheat versus shredded wheat with fruit. So old advice is still true. Eat your fruits and veggies. Choose green, orange, red, yellow, blue, purple, and white fruits and vegetables. Enjoy eating mostly whole fruit rather than just juice. You'll have fewer calories, less sugar, and feel more satisfied. So despite all the things you hear about eating that can be very confusing, the old advice is what still works. Fruits and vegetables provide vitamins, minerals, fiber, and many other benefits that protect our bodies, such as things like antioxidants. So make sure that you eat a rainbow of colors to help make sure that you get the greatest benefit. Many of the products that we eat are made from refined grains. So when these grains are processed, the dietary fiber and many of those nutrients are removed. So some of those nutrients can be replaced, but many of them are not. So start making a small shift and substitute whole grains for some of the refined grains that you may typically eat. And of course we've all heard this, but work towards making half the grains you eat whole grains. And if you already eat all whole grains, then you're a step ahead. So you can see the list here of some whole grain items. I do want to talk about popcorn. This is not talking about the extra butter microwavable popcorn. This is talking about the kind when you buy kernels and you pop it on the stove. I also want to point out that wheat bread does not always mean it's the healthiest option. Instead, eat fiber-rich breads that are 100% whole wheat or sprouted breads, because wheat can be added to any carb and labeled as a wheat product. So unless it is 100% whole wheat, bread contains enriched flour, which means the nutrients have been stripped. Solid fats are fats that are found in meats, poultry, dairy products solid vegetable oils and some tropical oils. So they contain more saturated fat than liquid fats do. So start making a shift from using the solid fats to liquid oils. So you can see examples here of the butter and shortening and stick margarine to using liquid oils like olive oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, coconut oil, etc. This does include while you are cooking, but it also is whenever you choose packaged foods. So make sure whenever you're looking at a packaged food, you choose the food that's the lowest in saturated fat. So how can you tell what packaged foods are healthier than the others? New products are always being developed, and old products are constantly being reformulated. So if you learn to read nutrition fact labels on foods, this is the best way for you to keep up with which foods are healthier and which foods are less healthy. So first you start with looking at the serving size. For example, if a bottle of a sports drink is actually 2 servings and you drink the whole bottle, you have to double the calories and the rest of the nutrients on the label. While most of nutrition facts have kind of changed over the time and the rules and regulations have changed, if you look at some drinks now, it is actually the calories and the other nutrients for the whole bottle, because they realize that people aren't just drinking 8 ounces of a Coca-Cola, they're drinking the whole bottle. But not all labels are like that, so just keep that in mind. Also, look at how many calories are in the serving that you're consuming. As a general guideline, 40 calories is considered low, 100 calories is considered moderate, and 400 or more calories is considered high. And then in that same aspect regarding the percent daily value, if it is 5% or less, it's considered low for dietary fiber, vitamins, and minerals. Also notice the percent daily value of saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, and sodium. So a serving with more than 20% of the daily value is considered high. So here are just a few marketing labels that you might see that sometimes can be tricky, especially because of the way it's marketed. Yes, while you see some of these labels, it does mean that it is the healthier option, but that is not always the case. It goes back to reading that nutrition facts label is really what it comes down to. So I'm not going to read all these. I'm sure you've seen them before, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So reading the list of ingredients on packages tells you what is in the food and what proportions. Ingredients are listed in descending order of weight from most to least. So whatever's first on the label is what is in there the most, and the last thing on that label is what is in there the least. So if you're concerned about added sugars, look to see if sugar or other names for added sugar, such as high fructose corn syrup, are one of the first few ingredients. Nutrition labels now even say includes added sugar of whatever, so you can tell how much has actually been added and what's actually natural sugar. To choose whole grains, check to see if the word whole is in the first ingredient in the list next to the name of the grain. Whole wheat is a good example. Enriched flour does not describe whole grains. So here's an example versus plain yogurt versus fruit yogurt. So in this fruit yogurt, you can see that it has high fructose corn syrup. So obviously added sugar. So you're better off getting plain yogurt and adding, some natural sweeteners like honey and some fruit on top to sweeten it. Rather than fruit yogurt. Typically a cup that's kind of pictured as like 26 grams of sugar. And so just reading those nutrition facts labels is important. So if you've made it to this point, thanks so much for sticking through a lot of material kind of crammed in a short period of time. I'm hoping that wasn't clear as mud for you, but if you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My direct line is listed on this page as well as my email address. So as always, please reach out if you have any questions. Have a great rest of the day.